we're going to get started with the presentation right now, and we thank you all for joining us on this. Today, this is an auspicious occasion for us to be releasing this comprehensive report. We are going to do a quick overview with you about what the Housing for All plan means and why it's so important. And then we're going to have our speakers come in and chime in and explain why they care about this strategy so much and why this is so important from their perspective. And then we'll take questions. So we're going to start with the presentation. I'm going to start. I'm talking to our team members who are helping with the tech pieces. I am going to share my screen and start with the PowerPoint, a very quick overview. Some of you have seen this already, and we're going to go through that really quickly to get to the meat of it, because we know that that's what you all care about. So just a quick overview. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, yeah, great. So we're going to move through this really quickly. As I said, the HousingNOLA 10-year plan was designed to end housing insecurity in New Orleans. This was after, a decade of billions of dollars being spent to rebuild New Orleans. We doubled the amount of Section 8 vouchers that we had. We rebuilt almost all of the existing public housing. People got grants and subsidy to rebuild, to come home through the Road Home program. Landlords got assistance. But still, in 2014, when HousingNOLA was launched, we were in the midst of an unprecedented housing crisis, where wages had not kept pace with exploding price values and home values and rent. Despite all of the subsidized housing that was brought on board, we actually didn't restrain the market. We didn't slow things down, and it was not connected to what people made. So there's this huge mismatch. In 2020, these are 2019 numbers. We're waiting to get the new numbers from the census. It's 2022, but we saw that the numbers haven't changed that much. Median income is still pretty low, but median rent has continued to rise. Average home values have exploded. Wages are stagnating. Housing costs continue to rise. And why is this important? That $38,000 a year is for a family of 4. That family should not be paying more than $960 per month on their total housing costs. That includes their utilities. So this is mortgage plus utilities and rent plus utilities. And so with rent at $900, almost $1,000 a month, that means that they're incredibly cost burdened when they add their utilities. And then that also means that they're left with about $1,800 a month to deal with things like food and transportation and all childcare. And it just doesn't work. And so the living wage for that family should be about $26 an hour. Rental wage is about $20 an hour for them to afford the average apartment. And we've now gotten to the place where the minimum wage at the city of New Orleans for its workers is $15 an hour, but we're still lagging behind in other areas. There are a lot of reasons for this. Systemic bias is the underlying cause. HousingNOLA was started so that we could address key priorities, key goals: ending systemic inequity, creating resilient communities, housing for all, using strategic goals in order to improve everyone's quality of life. You guys have seen this part of the presentation before. We talk about the report card, but this is what we're talking about today. In 2018, we looked at everything that HousingNOLA launched and said that we needed about $6 billion. That's $6 billion with a B, in order to address the housing crisis that we started looking at in 2014, 2015, when the HousingNOLA plan was launched. Unfortunately, coronavirus has had a massive disruption on a number of fronts to our work and to our efforts, as well as the fact that our state and local and federal partners have not kept up their end of the bargain. We have not addressed housing the way that we should have. This compounded with the coronavirus it just made the problems even worse than they were when we started this work 7 years ago. This is a snapshot so you can see how much homeowners and renters are struggling right now. How many of people are missing their payments, missing rental payments, missing mortgage payments? This is something that people don't like to talk about a lot, how homeowners are struggling. Sometimes we think by helping people become homeowners, we have solved their problems. We have got to make sure that we correct for the systemic bias that makes homeownership so perilous for people of color to maintain and stops it from becoming a wealth building proposition. So, and then we add to all of that Hurricane Ida, that while Hurricane Ida certainly did not have as significant an impact on the city of New Orleans as it did our neighbors in the river parishes and those in Bayou Country, there was impact here. And the fact that the entire city was rendered virtually unlivable because of the power outage should give us cause to think we need to be investing in energy and efficiency, and we need to be prioritizing housing. That is what's necessary to lead to a quality of life that we can all enjoy. And we want to make sure that we're not simply talking about making some of the same tired investments that we've done before. We don't want people embracing voodoo economics, thinking that just because it says voodoo in its name, that's something that New Orleans wants to do. We need to have a comprehensive strategy that would solve these problems. And so this is, as a highlight, it's a $37 billion investment that is necessary. This investment is necessary, not just in the bricks and mortar, but in the people of New Orleans. We're talking about building new energy efficient single family and multifamily homes to bring people home. There are about 55,000 folks, workers, who cannot live in New Orleans and don't live in New Orleans. We also want to make sure that the people who are already here have their homes rehabbed and fully weatherized and strengthened, because one, that will bring down their housing costs. And Logan's going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. I just want to give everybody the high points of what this is talking about. Well, we're going to break it down, certainly as we have questions, but we want to talk about the high points. We also are investing in our people. We want to talk about supportive services, the kind of wraparound services that are necessary so that people can be successful, so that homeowners, people we've helped buy homes, people who've taken advantage of homeownership programs, don't find themselves struggling against systemic bias, against the rigged game that's out there. We want to invest also in policy changes so that people can discriminate against you if you're using a voucher to rent, so that if you're a formerly incarcerated person coming home, you have somewhere to stay, and that if you're a older person and you need somewhere to stay, you have somewhere to stay. So this is what we're looking for. This is the Housing for All Action Plan. We are also looking to increase the green jobs industry. We're talking about lowering insurance and property taxes, reduce carbon emissions. This is an intersectional opportunity that has 4 priorities that are meant to bolster the 7 goals that HousingNOLA lives by. So we want to eliminate cost burden, close the racial wealth gap, ensure a more resilient housing stock and system, and combat displacement. So I'm going to pause right here and stop sharing my screen. So I want to give Logan and then Asali and then Chuck a chance to talk about why it's so important that we make these kinds of investments and why they are they've been a part of the Housing for All planning process, and why they've been a part of HousingNOLA for this while. So Logan, you're up first.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Andronika. This is so deeply critical for the people of our city. As many of you know, my name is Logan Burke. I am with the Alliance for Affordable Energy. We are a consumer and environmental advocacy organization working on energy issues across Louisiana. And this hits close to home. Many Louisianans, including over 18,000 New Orleanians, are paying upwards of 20% of their income on their home energy bills alone. That is an extreme energy burden. And that means it doesn't matter how low your rent is, even if you can't pay your utility bills, to stay safe and healthy in your homes, to heat and cool your home, and manage extreme weather that we're experiencing year round now. The New Orleans City Council has an extreme opportunity to really focus these investments, investments, both traditional energy efficiency programs, but also things like residential solar and rooftop to improve folks' conditions year round, as well as during extreme conditions. And we really hope that both the council and the legislature this year take a really good look at the opportunities that are available through the infrastructure bill. There are loads of dollars available to help really reduce these energy costs that all of us are paying, and reduce our housing costs overall, and make our homes more resilient and safe and healthy. We also know that New Orleans and some other cities in our state have extreme heat island effects that can mean the difference of 18 degrees on the hottest day of the year from Central City to Uptown New Orleans. When you're thinking about the difference between 18 degrees, you're thinking about the difference in hundreds of dollars a month on your utility bills. These are challenges we can target, and that we can make people more stable in their homes, whether they're homeowners or renters. I don't want to take too much longer, so I will hand it back to Andronika, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We're going to let all the speakers speak, and I'm going to take everyone through the numbers, and then we're going to take questions. So Asali, you're up next.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So pardon the hoarseness in my voice. I was throwing some throws at the parade yesterday. So I'm excited to be back in the carnival vein and spirit. But why I'm super excited about the HousingNOLA plan is because it's a call to action. And it's a call that really reverberates throughout so much of the work that many of us have been doing as community servants, as folks who are committed to making our city better, and to getting us to the place where all of our citizens can thrive. And I think that the four pillars called out, do just that. Closing the racial equity gap, building our housing stock and making it sustainable and affordable, and made for all citizens to thrive, and combating the displacement that we're facing, and fighting for the climate justice and resilience of our city. We often don't think of all of those things being tied up in one place, but in New Orleans, they're tied up in the culture, and they're tied up in our neighborhoods, which is a reflection of our housing. And so I'm very proud to have been a part of this process. I'm extremely grateful for the leadership of Andronika and helping all of us, the regular citizens of New Orleans, to figure out how we express our values and how we make a stand. We really need to make a stand in order to save our city. And this call to action does that. And it does it by reflecting the voices of the most vulnerable and really the most experienced, the people who are expert at what it takes to thrive, at what it takes to be resilient. And this is their voices that are coming through in this plan and in this call. And I urge everyone, if you care about New Orleans, and if you believe in our ability to make it, because it's not always clear, with the data and the numbers and the way things are, it's not always clear that we will be able to make it. But if we are, we have to join hands in action. And it is the actions of this plan that I'm planning to put all of myself and my family and my organization's energy behind.
Thank you so much, Asali. Appreciate it. And so we're going to also make sure that all media you're going to get after here, in addition to the link to the video, you're also going to get the names and the titles of everyone. Although folks like Asali and Logan and our next speaker, Chuck, certainly are well known to local media, but we want to make sure that everyone has their contact information, their name and contact information. So Chuck Morse, you're up next.
Thanks, Andronika. It's been a pleasure being part of this process. a much needed process. As an organization that tries to serve the underserved, there is a tremendous need for the four pillars that Andronika is talking about. As an organization that is in the business of making sure that the people that we serve can have affordable housing. The piece where climate equity is so important, everybody talks about sustainability and resiliency. Again, until we do these things, we will not be resilient. We won't be sustainable. I know Sally talked about, how do we help our city thrive? We help our city thrive by understanding how we can survive. And how do we survive? Logan talked about the heat island effect. We're talking at Thrive about training people to ensure that they understand how to implement some of the things that this plan has in it. And so we think about it oftentimes about how do we help, how do we leverage this work to help people close the racial equity gap? Yes, when we spend so much more money on energy than other folks. How do we do it when it's 4 degrees, 5 degrees warmer in underserved communities? How do we help themselves be part of the solution? And part of what we do is train individuals to be part of the solution, train them for these futuristic jobs, train them for the these current jobs, and also for current contracts. It's my pleasure to serve on the city's Climate Action Plan Equity Committee and chair the small business, workforce, and cultural part of it. And Logan's also on that committee as we put our heads together to make sure that the least of them, all of us, can benefit from being part of a great city, but also how do we make sure that our housing stock is where it needs to be? How do we make sure that we're not spending more money on our energy bill than we are on our monthly rent? What do those things look like? And I think that green infrastructure, weatherization, those things are going to be not only the solution to the problem, but it's also going to help be part of the solution to our economic disparity. 2% of African American businesses, gross incomes. And it's also going to be the key to making sure that we have the workforce of the future. And Thrive is so happy to be part of this conversation. And thank you, Andronika, for leading this.
Thank you for joining us, all of you. And I have to also take a moment. We're gonna share the piece that is the cornerstone of this, the analysis that has been done that breaks down this $37 billion. We're going to put it up on the screen right now. And I have to thank Alex Miller, Sandy Stroud, Z Smith, Erica Zucker, and the team here at HousingNOLA and GNOHA, who've all worked on putting these numbers together, along with the community and our intersectional partners who have helped us, who have helped drive these new priorities, these new pillars. We're gonna start using that, Chuck. I think that's a better nomenclature than priorities. So we can go ahead and share the chart that breaks down the numbers, so we can go through them so everybody can understand what we're talking about. So as you see here, it says, again, category 1, resilient housing interventions, and this is live on our website now. The full document is live now. Members of the media have been sent that were sent the link in advance, so you all could see it. But for those who are with the public and our partners, you simply need to go to our website. It's going to be put out on social media to take a look at this and look at these numbers and break this down yourself. So the number of households, and this is an important piece. We have always prioritized the need to end systemic bias and to address racial equity. But what we've also called out here expressly is not just the number, but the racial equity impact. Housing the households of color that are addressed by this problem, so you can see how disproportionate the problem is. So in New Orleans, this is just for the city of New Orleans, how many homes, households that are between 0 and 60% AMI, so are most vulnerable, who are struggling with their utility bills. who need this kind of intervention for to lower their utility bills. So to make their home resilient, to make it strong. This will have a twofold, this investment will have a twofold impact. They will be able to lower their utility costs, and their homes will be also more resilient, and it should lead to a lowering in their insurance costs, right? So this is something for homeowners and for renters. It's 55,000 households in New Orleans, 55,000 households. 46,000 of those households are people of color. And at $60,000 per, the intervention cost is about $2.4 billion. So this is a lot of money we're talking about here. We want to be clear that we see this as an investment. This is not simply grants that we're looking for, because for example, some of these people are renters. So their landlords could be offered low interest loans to affect these repairs that will allow their properties to be more stable. We're talking about preserving existing affordable rental homes. So we've got units that have been created in the next category. We've got units that have been created after Katrina. It's now 17 years. This year is going to be 17 years after Hurricane Katrina. There are going to be investments that have already started to expire. Everything from the small rental property program. Some of those units have already come offline. What would it take to get them back? And then we also talk about what we call the naturally occurring affordable housing, or what I like to call genuine market rate, making sure that those properties are not lost to us. So while yes, we are focused on the most vulnerable 0-60% AMI, we have not ignored and not forgotten people above that, because a lot of those folks don't qualify for assistance either. We are being very intentional about where the interventions can happen so that we can catalyze the investment necessary to get us the rest of the way, right? So going to category 3, and this is a big piece that is, we're not simply talking about ending displacements and stopping people from being forced out of the city. We are talking about finally bringing home the people who have been pushed out of the city, the people who are not able to come back after Katrina, and the people who've been pushed out in the last 17 years, because despite all of the work that's been done, we still haven't brought them home. And so you compare this, so this is bringing those folks home, new construction. And again, this is why Chuck and Thrive NOLA is a part of this, because this is work, right? This is why some of our developer partners are a part of this. This is work. This is investment in our community that will bring home thousands of people and finally get us back on a growth trajectory. It is not an accident that we talk about this as an investment strategy, that we talk about creating not just an affordable and equitable, but a stronger New Orleans. And go to category 4, we talked about that we want to make sure that we're talking about direct assistance, wraparound services, not just for our homeless, that's included in there, but also, again, for homeowners who have purchased and now find themselves struggling, for renters who have other issues. And this is why we say put housing first, because the foundation for these services need to start in a safe, stable, affordable home. And so as everyone is worried, and rightfully so, about what's happening with crime in our city, we need our leaders to look to solutions that they have never done, they've never embraced before. We need our leaders to make the kind of strategic investments that would complement other community efforts, community rebuilding efforts, crime reducing efforts. We can't simply throw everyone in jail. We can't simply, that doesn't work. This is the most incarcerated place on the planet, and we have the crime that we have. So clearly, throwing these folks away is not the answer. We need, and this is the only thing that we've never done. We've never, as a community, we have never made the kinds of investments necessary. And done so, I should say this, we've made the investments, but we've never done so with a clear, cogent vision that is inside of the Housing for All Action Plan, that is inside the HousingNOLA plan. We took about $50 billion of Katrina money from insurance and from government grants and philanthropy and private investments, and we invested it, and we did not address racial bias. Almost 100,000 African Americans were not able to come home because of our efforts. So we didn't really address racial bias. We built and we built and we built, but we didn't address systemic bias, and we have to do that now. And then finally, again, Hurricane Ida, making sure that while there are not as many people who were impacted, there were people who were hurt by Hurricane Ida. We need to respond to that, and we need to make sure that the federal allocation is right size. And so that's another reason for making sure that we have these numbers, so that when we talk about climate change dollars, that we're not simply investing in false solutions that will not work, that we are investing in our communities. When we're talking about infrastructure dollars, we recognize that housing is a part of infrastructure, and we can stabilize our communities and make them safer. And when we talk about addressing things like crime, we're not simply talking about building more jails, we need to build more houses. So that we gave a lot to you all, so I want to open it up for questions. And mostly thank you for that comment about asset poverty alleviation pathways for the formerly incarcerated persons. Absolutely, giving folks who have been released from prison the chance to build wealth on their own. It has to be a part of the strategy, but we also have to make sure that they're successful. So we're gonna ahead and turn off the screen sharing, but we're going to open it up for any questions that the media or any of our partners or anybody who's invited might have. And mostly, if you want to offer your comment, you can do so right now on audio, or come off mute. Come off mute and come on camera.
Andronika, this is Chuck. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of the conversation. The question was just asked about return to citizens, ex-offenders. I think that this is a great opportunity to help them get back on their feet and find sustainable jobs. And again, that's what we do at Thrive, but these are jobs that are going to be around for a while. There's a lot of them. And so this is a great entree for them to economic sustainability.
Thank you for that, Chuck. All right, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, hi, this is Ben Myers with the Times-Picayune. I was just looking at your number items here, and the supportive services to prevent homelessness. Can you just talk a little bit more about where the numbers come from?
So yes, so I'm glad you brought that point up. We didn't get into that on the presentation, but it's an important point to make now. So because it's different than what we normally see when we talk about homelessness, right? The numbers that Unity has done with the point in time count, right, have shown that homelessness has gone down over the last few years, but that's chronic homelessness. And Romy, can you spotlight me too? That's chronic homelessness, and not simply that's chronic homelessness, and not simply what we're counting. We are counting the chronically homeless and homeless children. And the Department of Education released a report last year. So we're waiting for the update for this year's April of 2021. So we're waiting for the report for this year. There are 3,000 homeless children in New Orleans. So those are children and they count homelessness a little differently than Unity does. They are still homeless, but it's a different category. So they're homeless in shelters. They're homeless on the street. They are also doubled up, or they're living in a hotel motel. And so that's why that number is higher than what we normally see. And so we want to make sure that those children and their families have supportive wraparound services that they can't get through Unity, a lot of them, because not all of them qualify for Unity's programs. The school board provides them with some resources, but they actually need to be connected to housing in a way that what the McKinney-Vento programs that the school board utilizes just doesn't meet those needs. So we need to make a deeper investment to help those folks. So that's the homeless population that we use to quantify this. That's how and that's why the numbers are different. So that's not to say Unity's numbers are wrong. They're not. They're talking about chronically homeless adults. We are talking about those chronically homeless adults because we want to bolster Unity's programs as well, and children and their families.
Thanks for that. If I may, just a quick follow-up. Can you talk about how you put a value on, so you've got your calculations here. How did you come up with $10.7 billion and what does that pay for?
So yeah, so what we talked about, we break everything down and that's with Z Smith and Alex Miller and Eric Zucker and our team here, and Alex Miller helped us work on, and Sandy Stroud, Alexandra Stroud. The numbers for construction are market numbers. Those consultants, those experts actually took polls, took assessments of what it takes to construct things now, right? Real live construction costs. It makes no sense to have these kinds of conversations if we're not talking about what it costs to build a home right now, what it costs to repair a home right now. And we recognize that prices are less than ideal, but again, we can't do anything about that without starting with, because we can talk about economies of scale to reduce prices and costs, but right now we have to start with the one unit cost to create things. So the breakdown and the methodology is in the back of the document. So we break down each one expressly. So for example, for the rehab, the weatherization, we're talking about making the kind of investments into the property that would make it so that the house could take solar panels. A lot of our properties have a lot of issues that they need new roofs. They have other structural problems that need to be addressed before you can put on a solar panel or a solar battery system and a backup battery system. That's included. It's talking about fixing the windows, all the things to make that house truly resilient. And that's a real cost today for those things. That's what you would expect to get. That per unit cost is what you would expect to be quoted by a contractor if you went and asked them to do those things on your homes. And we have different levels, as you can see. For the item numbers, for example, those came from FEMA calculations where they told us what level of damage they had. Again, using those real market numbers, we did that math. And for new construction, so from that's just new construction from the ground up, and building to the standards that we want to rehab the other houses to. And so and you see the per unit cost in there, and then the full dollar amount. So each category is a little different, but we explain how.
Thank you.
Ben, are you saying something else?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Okay, so you got a little garbled at the end. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Next question. Oh, thank you, Nari. Yes, and this is a good point that we need to talk about here is the folks who have not been able to come back because of the road home programs, the challenges that those folks have had. We are not going to forget about them. We won't. We will not forget about them. And that is part of this. And one thing that we did not talk about is that HousingNOLA is not simply here today to talk about the numbers and the need. We are also talking about how we are going to get into this in a different way. We are launching a program. We're relaunching a program, our Own the Crescent program, so that we can help small landlords who can't access capital right now in the market. We want them to be able to work with CDFI partners that we have, we're supporting, and that they can borrow funding to affect the kind of repairs that we're talking about. We also want to make this a true partnership with some of our public agencies like the Finance Authority of New Orleans that has a green mortgage product that also might be an alternative for some of those folks. So anyone who can't qualify for a green mortgage should be able to come to the Own the Crescent program. Or if you come to Own the Crescent and you're better suited for the green mortgage program, we'll send you there and work those programs together. And again, hopefully pilot these kinds of initiatives and demonstrate what's necessary to make these investments so that we can see additional investments from our public sector partners. But right now, we are relying almost exclusively on private sector dollars because from partners like the Roy and Patricia Disney Foundation, Hancock Whitney, JP Morgan Chase, to launch those kinds of initiatives and to make those things available, those dollars available to landlords so that they can fix up their property. And we want to make sure that they are renting to the hundreds of Section 8 voucher holders who can't find apartments right now. That has a racial equity impact on two fronts. Number one, for the landlord, they're going to get guaranteed rental income. They're going to get help fix up their property and guaranteed rental income because they're going to be renting a Section 8, which will guarantee that income. And on the renter side, we are going to be targeting Black women and their children. Again, the folks who are homeless. We want to make sure that we're building wealth and creating opportunities on the sides of the spectrum when we talk about racial equity, on the groups that have been ignored, right? These are, a lot of these properties have been inherited by people. This is the home ownership efforts not leading to their logical conclusion to build wealth. Someone's family may have bought a home, they grew up in that house, they died, and their children have not been able to make that investment work for them. Their heirs have not been able to make that investment work for them. They can't access capital to rehab it and then to rent it. And so this is one of the things that we've been talking about, this tension between when you hear, sometimes you hear elected officials go, oh, I care about affordable housing, but I really only care about home ownership. And some of them are outright insinuating that something's wrong with renters. And then they talk about building wealth in the African-American community. The way you build wealth in the African-American community with home ownership, this is what happened in the white community, is that becomes an asset that moves on to the next generation and they monetize it. That's where the wealth happens. And so that has to be either selling it to someone else, which is not a long-term wealth proposition, it's holding on to it and renting it to someone else who needs it, and renting it at a fair amount that you can make money and that person can live in, and that it's sustainable and that it's healthy. And so we have thousands of properties that are not being utilized, that are not being accessed. And those owners who are, most of them are natives, many of them are African-Americans who can't access capital. That combined with hundreds, thousands of Black families who can't find homes to rent. This is a loss on every level, and it is part of the foundational problem that we have in this market, because this doesn't make any sense that we have hundreds or thousands of homes that could be occupied, thousands of vacant parcels that could have home built on them, and it's not happening, while you have people who can pay, who can guarantee payment, who can't find housing. So we want to interrupt that. And so HousingNOLA is going to, with our Own the Crescent program, we're going to take that on directly. And we want to also make sure that the rest of this work is being done by government and not making wrong-headed investments in strategies that are not going to work. All right, any other questions? All right, well, I think that's it. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate everyone for being here. And for the media, you guys are going to get the full press release and the link to the video in about an hour or so. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. And thank you to our guests, and thank you to the team, the HousingNOLA staff and the NOHA staff, and to the advisory committee who helped put us together. Thank y'all again.